if you want to support the show, any of the shows, either this or whichever show, I'm not on right now because this is just a blanket ad for all of them, and the website, you can go to bewareofspoilers.com. In the description for any of the episodes of Beware of Spoilers, there is the option to donate. If you don't want to donate that way, you can donate directly through the website. We do have that on mwpnews.com. And if you don't want to support that way, then going to mwpnews.com will help out because we have ads there. We don't want to keep it, where there's a lot of ads. There's a few ads. But the point is we want to make it so that way, we can sustain this for the long term. If people donate, we're never going to paywall anything, I don't think, as of right now. But if people start donating, we'll start doing cooler and cooler stuff. Like donations are how we get to cover stuff like Tribeca and other, film festivals. And, we may be able to bring on more people to help out. So if you want to help out the show and you want more content from us, by all means, even just going and giving us a 5-star rating on Spotify helps out a lot. But that's it. That's the only ad we'll have on the podcast ever. But here's whatever podcast you're going to be listening to. Good evening, and welcome to Exploring Hyperspace Lanes. I am Adam. And we're going to have a regular episode in the near future. Don't worry. It's just, Josie's been busy. She's back from vacation. We're going to be getting back to it. We're going to be doing Rogue One at some point in the very near future. Do not worry. And what we're going to talk about today is a relatively new book. It came out like 2 weeks ago at this point. The new High Republic book, Temptation of the Force. And I think one of the things that we're going to use is kind of a jumping off point, because the book's fantastic. Basically where we are in the High Republic is the Republic is attempting to integrate. And this is about, I think it's 200 or 300 years before the events of the Skywalker saga. So about 100 years before the Acolyte. We're watching the Jedi kind of, be this beacon of hope for the Republic, as they are, as they're trying to get the Outer Rim and everyone kind of into line. And one of the things that I think the High Republic is, as we get to it, because here's the thing. I think the Jedi-Sith War is still canon. I'm not 100% on that. I think bits and pieces of it are still canon. Like the idea that there was a giant war between the Jedi and the Sith. And the fact that the Sith did have a presence is there. And then the rise of the Sith Order. So I think that, and if you look at the website for the eras of Star Wars, if you go to the High Republic, or not the High Republic, the Old Republic era, they say there is stuff that happens here. The Jedi are formally founded, and then there's a schism from within, leads to the creation of the Sith, and, the thing ensues. Now, I don't know if they just consider it like the way it is. It's like, is the Sith Empire just part of the Old Republic era? Is that what it is? I don't know. Regardless, the point is, we have this vast world, and I think what the new canon is going to be. Because keep in mind, again, this has all been retconned at least once or several times over, and, here we are. And what this is going to end up being the story of is the story of how kind of complacency and accepting that, like, we won, we did the job, and not being vigilant about the threat will ultimately be the categorical undoing of the Jedi and the rise of the Empire. Now, do I agree that the entirety of Star Wars canon should be focused around one, especially when you're dealing with the frame of several thousand years? Do I believe that we should have the Galactic Civil War, which is like, let's say the Imperial era, from beginning to end is, what, 25 years, if that. Like, 'cause I think it's like 4 years total that the original trilogy takes place over, plus the 19, so not even 25 years. Like, that whole thing is dependent on, all the stuff that comes before it leads up to it, which, like, yeah, from a historical standpoint, that's not inaccurate, where it's like, we are the sum of all the decisions that come before and after. It just feels a little weird. Um, so to that end, the High Republic is going to end up being the period that kind of sets the immediate stage, where the galaxy at the start of the High Republic is not the unified or even somewhat unified galaxy that we see in the prequels, where it's like there's the core, the mid rim, the outer rim. At this point, the outer rim is still kind of its own thing, and it's still kind of like the point of the High Republic is they want to integrate and say we are one republic. We're here to do what's great for everyone. And the people who live in the who live in the outer rim are like, well, we want to govern ourselves. And the Nihil come around and they're like, well, we're going to do whatever we want, and we're going to show the Republic that they have no power to tell us what to do. They're fundamentally states' rights people, to put it in the modern American, you know, parlance, which I don't think it's even that modern. But that's kind of what they are. So what they're doing is they are attacking. And they're carrying out these attacks. They're altering hyperspace. They have this wall up to keep, to keep certain things in, like keep certain aspects of the galaxy in their clutches. It's a whole thing that they have. And this book is, you know, there's an occlusion zone which is zoned off by the Nihil. You can't get into or out of, because of the storm wall. And for those who know what the storm wall is, it's basically these gravity wells that they have all over the place by the, we talk about it a lot with the, in the Imperial era, the Interdictor class Star Destroyer have these gravity wells that if you're going through hyperspace near it, you will be sucked out of hyperspace. The Nihil are using this to, you're coming out of hyperspace, and you're immediately hitting something, blowing you up, or you're in a kill zone where there are a bunch of Nihil ships will just blow you up. So this effectively cuts off all entry into the occlusion zone, which is their controlled areas. And in this book, Naboo is in the occlusion zone. So it's an interesting conundrum they've put the characters in here. And what this fundamentally becomes about is this book is about the Republic trying to figure out how to get around the storm wall and deal with that. There's also this blight, and there's also these things called the Nameless that are Force negative, I guess would be the right way to say it, where the Jedi can't sense them. They can suck the Force out of stuff. It's just a whole big thing. Now, I know what you're thinking. This feels like a lot to have not been referenced in the main Star Wars saga, but, I mean, granted, how much other shit happens in real life that we don't talk about on a daily basis, especially when it's, like, only tangentially related to what's going on now, especially considering that, like, what happened then, like, I think we're easing into territory where it's, like, we're starting to see how what the Nihil were about is kind of like, what the Separatists were. It's a states' rights issue. They want to be able to control their territories the way they want without Republic interference. And the Republic's like, no, you got to do what we want. And the question then fundamentally becomes, what does this mean for the galaxy? And how does the wider universe do it? And how does this fit into my initial statement? The idea that the High Republic is about the beginning of the decline. And we're going to pair this with the Acolyte. So spoilers for the Acolyte, including last night's episode, episode 5, where we had the identity of the Master revealed, which wasn't really a trick, but I mean, it was kind of, obvious. But in this episode, we get, it's about the rise of the Sith, the initial return of the Sith, in a upfront way, because keep in mind, the Sith don't really exist in the Acolyte. They're not really there. It's a story of, like, the Nihil, but they are Force neutral. They're not Force users. Like, the Drengir are there, and they are dark side Ents, but even they aren't, a major, like, the major bad guy of the era, and they aren't organized in the way that the Sith are. So this is about the kind of the return of the Sith, so to speak. And one of the things that we kind of have to deal with is the Jedi Council, by the time we get to the prequels, are not perfect. And it's kind of the entire point of the prequel trilogy, that the Jedi Council makes a series of, you know, of incredibly bad decisions, leading to the decline and destruction of the Empire. I'm sorry, the decline and destruction of the Republic, creating the Empire. Because what it is like, let's say, for example, we'll start with the immediate aftermath of this war that I think is allegedly still canon. And for the sake of this, we will say the Jedi-Sith War is still canon. Because I believe it is. They've referenced it several times, and I think even, I would say, the line that everyone points to as, oh, the Acolyte doesn't care about canon, points to the fact that the Jedi-Sith War has happened. And it's, the Sith haven't been seen for millennia. Okay, so we have the Jedi-Sith War, and then the Jedi do eventually win. The Sith are subdued, and they believe defeated. And we get to the Republic has been reestablished. The Republic now exists in its current form. The Jedi are the peacekeepers and of the galaxy and all of that. As the galaxy starts to grow, and as the galaxy starts to expand what it's doing, the question becomes, what causes the Jedi to fall out of favor? And the proof here is, the thing here is, it's the proof that the Jedi can't protect the galaxy or protect themselves from all threats. That's the thing that will start to make people grow disillusioned with the Jedi. What this is, and what it appears all of this is, and quite possibly could be the biggest weakness of the Star Wars franchise, its commitment to canon and timelines in a way that other things work better when it's like, these are just assorted stories from this universe. Like, get ready. It's like, if you look at a comic book, I think it flows a little bit better, but we're treating it like this. So, this idea that the universe as a whole, what I'm trying to say is, like, the idea that, like, the entire galaxy is going to be watching as the Nihil do this. They put up this wall. The Jedi are powerless to stop them initially, and it takes a while for things to get back to normal. Even if things do get back to normal in reasonably quick order, and they do manage to dispatch Marchion Ro, who at this point, by the end of this book, has decided, like, look, we want statehood. We want to be acknowledged as our own sovereign entity, and we want to be treated as such by the Republic. Like, at this point, this idea that it's showing the Jedi have weaknesses. Now, we go ahead to the Acolyte, which is toward the end of the High Republic, or it is the end of the High Republic, transitioning to the fall of the Republic. This is the point where we start to see that, Vernestra Rose says, we have political and political enemies and other enemies. Like, if we let people know that we are being defeated by someone else who can use the Force, that's going to embolden their attacks. So what that's saying is, within the Republic, it's not 100% approval for the Jedi at that point. So now that they have this going on, this is kind of the point where they decide to, okay, we have to keep this under wraps. And that's where we are now with the High Republic. With the Acolyte, I'm sorry. I'm very tired today. Like, as this is happening, now we have the arrival of this Sith Lord. And I don't think that this is going to directly influence things outside the Jedi Council, but this is going to change the series of events going forward and reframe how the Jedi Council deals with these threats. This idea that, like, we can't let this become common knowledge is kind of what's going to end up leading to where we are by the time we get to the prequels. The Jedi aren't acting in the interest of the galaxy. It's in the interest of the galaxy to be like, by the way, these incredibly dangerous powers we have, that we can move things with our minds, we can choke people out, We can do all this stuff. We're not the only ones who can do that. There are bad people out there who could also do that. Like, that's the best interest of the galaxy. At the same time, what does that benefit to tell people when they're powerless to stop it? So it puts them in this weird conundrum, and it's like, how do we handle this new paradigm? And that's where they're stuck now. So I don't think it gets out. I don't think it gets out. See, that's the thing. I think that what this does is it leads to the orthodoxy that we get to in the Jedi Order in the prequels. Because that's the thing about, like, this most recent book, Temptation of the Force. Like, one of the big things is this romance that happens between Elzar Mann and Avar Chris. Like, these two, like, it's hot. Like, these two, they're in love with each other, and they are intimate with each other in this book. And to that end, like like what that's going to lead to is this crackdown of, like, when we get to the teachings of Yoda, like, anger leads to hate, hate leads to, the whole thing. Like, jealousy leads to anger, anger leads to hate, hate leads to the dark side. Like, these things are all going to become the central tenets of the Jedi following this show. And it's going to be this crackdown where it's like the Jedi are not going to be the same as they were, where there was this idea in this era of the journeyman Jedi, quote unquote, where it's a Jedi who was working with the Jedi Order and then it's like, look, I'm going to go fuck off and go through the galaxy and just kind of, see what it's like and just live among people and help out and do that kind of thing. Like, that was a thing that existed during the High Republic era. But it doesn't exist by the time you get to, the fall of the Republic. When we get to the prequel, it's like Dooku doesn't have that option. Like, Dooku is excommunicated from the Order. I mean, granted, he murders Yaddle, but he's excommunicated from the Order. They didn't know that at the time. Ahsoka is kicked from the Order. Instead of, like, in this era, if you wanted to go out and find yourself on, like, a Rumspringer, you were free to. You could do that. And that was part of it. But the issue was, that is going to be the thing that leads to someone turning to the dark side. And that's going to be what this guy was. Like, this guy, Kimir, or however you pronounce his name, the guy from The Good Place, he's going to make this discovery while he's out, doing that. And then once they quell him, and they think they've got this whole thing done, number one, there's going to be another one out there who's going to train Plagueis and all of that, and then eventually Palpatine. But beyond that, there's going to be a crackdown within the Order. Our lessons are leading people down this path. We've seen this happen. We cannot let this happen again. And then it's going to be that strict orthodoxy that we have there that's going to eventually lead to Anakin's fall. And then the destruction of the Jedi Order. And I think that's a really interesting storytelling place to take this. But people are so hung up on the breaking canon aspect of it. But we'll wrap up there for today, because I'm tired. I want to go eat, and it's been a long day. So until our next episode, which will be in a few days when we talk about Rogue One, have a great rest of your week.